Story 1. Wyoming truck driver. High crosswinds. Icy conditions as ground snow blows onto the road, and salt cannot keep up with the influx of snow, creating partially melted ice that refreezes into a smooth skating rink with the slightest change in elevation. It is a major truck route with nowhere to stop, leaving the shoulder of the highway as the only place to stop in low visibility conditions. Cold, windy, desolate. Oddly enough, it is one of my favorite places to drive when these same conditions exist with very light traffic. Give me a challenge, let me overcome it, and I am happy. Just keep the idiots far away when conditions are bad. Story 2. The triangle of 40 miles between Baltimore and Washington, District of Columbia, is without a doubt the worst stretch of highway in America. Too many reckless drivers, not enough lanes. Story 3. Delaware has many lane changes within a short distance, requiring frequent lane adjustments. Story 4. Definitely Mississippi. They are either 20 miles under or 20 miles over the speed limit, and they seem to have no concept of keeping distance between themselves and the car in front. Story 5. Texas, and it is not even close. If it is slightly too cold, people drive like idiots. If even a tiny drop of water falls from the sky, people drive like idiots. They will intentionally go faster than you to pass you, just to slam on their brakes because you tried to go around them once. The highways here are hell. Speed limits do not matter. It also feels like everyone is constantly sneezing or something with the way they are constantly swerving lanes. Story 6. Kansas. The United States is 3,000 miles across from east to west, and I am pretty sure 2,500 of those miles are in Kansas. Story 7. Least favorite for me, Florida. People drive like lunatics there, especially in southern Florida. Others, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and probably one or two more I am forgetting. Driving and drivers seem to have gotten worse over the past few years. Story 8. South Carolina. The state of the highways in South Carolina is a complete joke. The road quality is terrible, and the infrastructure cannot keep up with the number of vehicles on the road. Story 9. Rhode Island. Get out of the left lane. You drive like a deer running into traffic, timid and erratic. Connecticut. Get out of the left lane. You drive as if all the mirrors on your car are broken. New York. Stop blocking the left lane and then speeding up when I try to pass. New Jersey. You made me wait to let another man pump my gas. Pennsylvania. Stop driving the same speed as the person next to you. Also, why does it take twice as long as it should to drive across Pennsylvania? New Hampshire. Sorry, it's me. Vermont. Sorry, it's me. Story 10. Louisiana has the worst roads I have ever been on. 200 miles of constant bumping until your brain feels like jelly. Story 11. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Exactly 0.67 seconds to move over 5 lanes of traffic to get to an exit. Intense traffic. Hills like Mount Everest. Tunnels that no one can seem to drive properly through. Story 12. Florida, specifically around Miami, is terrifying. Anywhere in lower Westchester County, New York, is also dangerous. Those roads are like go-kart tracks with full-size sport utility vehicles going 90 miles per hour. No thanks. Story 13. Nebraska continues without much variation. There is little to see or do except count how many times you cross the Platte River. Story 14. Tough one for me. Indiana. Poor roads and overzealous law enforcement. Tennessee. Poor roads and overzealous law enforcement. Virginia. Overzealous law enforcement who can send you to prison for minor offenses. Ohio. Overzealous law enforcement with aggressive behavior. Drivers tend to be very slow. Louisiana. Dilapidated bridges, outdated roads, worn-out cars, and significant litter. Florida. Known for many issues on the road. Texas. Also known for many issues on the road. New Jersey. Stereotypically entitled and aggressive drivers. Best states to drive in: California, Oregon, Washington, Iowa, Wyoming, Hawaii, and upstate New York. Story 15. Definitely Maryland. Just wow. Gridlock. Incompetent and aggressive drivers. High-speed chases, specifically the part around the District of Columbia. Just an absolutely chaotic mess. Story 16, Long Island. I drive a school bus. I cannot believe the things I see. These people do not care about any lives, including their own. Story 17, Illinois, specifically the Chicago area. Because people drive poorly, everyone's car is damaged from constant collisions. Driving 70 miles per hour in a 55 miles per hour zone means you are the slow one. Story 18-1. Connecticut. 2. New Jersey. 3. Massachusetts. Massachusetts resident here and Boston traffic is unbearable. 4. Drivers in Maine are not necessarily bad. But I hate driving on the Pike, especially southern Maine. People go really fast on it, and a lot of the time it is just Massachusetts people on vacation. Connecticut again. Story 19. Connecticut. Every major highway always has some sort of construction or maintenance backup. Florida bad drivers, including old bad drivers, and scammers who will cause accidents to claim insurance. Story 20. Connecticut because Connecticut. Close second Florida simply because of Miami, a horrible place to drive. Story 21. I drove across Nebraska once almost 30 years ago, and I still think back on how plain, boring, and long it was. It was unpleasant. Story 22. Maryland. Even if you are in the far right lane, you will get passed by someone using the acceleration lane on highway on-ramps as passing lanes. They will literally leave the highway to speed past you on the right. I guess to them, as long as they are not on the shoulder, the on-ramps are fair game. Story 23. The District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, known as the DMV area, attract people from various states who come here to work for the government. Some of these individuals have never seen a town with more than one traffic light, let alone a 10-lane expressway. Additionally, some people in the Mid-Atlantic region can be perceived as elitist and entitled. Despite this, the priority should always be everyone's safety, not just individual convenience. Story 24. My favorite state to drive in is sober. That being said, here is an arbitrary synopsis of a few I have been through. Most boring, Kansas on Interstate 70. Nothing but Jesus signs and crops. Most annoying, Illinois because the roads are terrible, the drivers are rude, and the rest stops are almost always closed. Most insane, Mississippi. 22% of drivers do not have insurance, and with the giant Nissan plant in that state, everyone drives a Nissan. Basically, it is a thunderdome of beat-up Altimas all vying to see who can blow up their continuously variable transmissions the fastest. Prettiest, Montana. It is beautiful. Sneakiest, Iowa. Police use drones to catch you speeding and you will get a ticket in the mail 6 weeks later. It is diabolical. Most frustrating, Indiana. If you are from a legal marijuana state, you will get pulled over at high noon for a broken license plate light. Honorable mentions for weird or different. Missouri for its hills and lack of straight-line roads. Arizona for being dangerous if you break down. Kentucky is beautiful in the fall. Arkansas really cares if you speed. Minnesota is wilderness for 30 miles and then a town. Repeat until you are in Canada. The Dakotas do not exist, so they cannot be rated. Wyoming is hilariously desolate. Oregon is full of old cars you want but cannot afford. Thank you for listening to my talk. Story 25. Illinois, specifically around Chicago, is terrifying. The highways are full of drivers going more than 20 miles per hour faster than everyone else, weaving around other cars without signaling. They treat the road like a racetrack. It is also common to see people using the shoulder as another lane. Story 26. Texas is not even close. Most oblivious drivers are in the largest vehicles with the worst road and highway designs. I have lived all over the country, and no place is more terrifying than a Texas roadway in a big city. Story 27. New Mexico, especially along Interstate 40, has nothing but abandoned properties and dead animals along the way. As a single female driver, I only stop at large travel centers due to the number of creepy individuals I have encountered on this frequently taken trip. Story 28. Louisiana. Corrupt police officers, poor road conditions, and apparently, It is illegal to use a turn signal. The speed limits are so low that they are ignored by locals, but help you if you have out-of-state license plates. I was almost shot with my own legally carried firearm by an incompetent city police officer on Interstate 10. Story 29, Ohio. If you ever take Interstate 80, never drive through Ohio. Out-of-state plates will be ticketed for speeding. Story 30. I do not know about it being the worst, but Connecticut can be surprisingly challenging. There is no straightforward way to get through, so it takes much longer than expected to cross such a small state. Additionally, people drive aggressively, and there are pockets of heavy traffic, especially around Stamford and Hartford. Furthermore, for such a scenic road, the Merritt Parkway is a nightmare if you are not familiar with local driving habits. Connecticut is a difficult state to drive in. Story 31. In the 1990s, it was definitely Massachusetts drivers, specifically in Boston. Over the last 30 years, I think they have spread out to other states. Every state has its particular bad drivers, such as not being able to drive in a tiny amount of snow if you are from Florida, or everyone staying in a single lane for 3 miles before a merge in Michigan. Every state has its share of bad drivers, and they seem to be everywhere. In the early 2000s, Michigan highways received the award for worst crumbling infrastructure, which now belongs to Illinois. So, which state has bad infrastructure and bad drivers today? Illinois. Drivers there often do not know to pass on the left and get out of the lane. The minimum speed limit is just under the speed of sound. Potholes, especially near Chicago, along with years of construction, result in potholes everywhere within a year. Story 32. So far, Texas, but mainly within 30 miles of the Houston area, and it gets worse the closer you get. I have driven to Colorado twice over the last couple of summers for vacation, and both times on the return trip I am reminded of how overly aggressive people drive here. Most people will not use signals and in fact see it as a sign of weakness. Drivers will not allow you to leave any reasonable space in front of your vehicle. Regularly speed at least 10 to 25 miles per hour over the speed limit, cross over solid center lines to pass and on entrance and exit ramps, follow very closely for no reason, brake check other drivers, or even swerve toward one another. The congestion due to little or no commuting alternatives is insane. It is Mad Max-esque out on the roadways here, and I am from here, and it seems to be getting worse. Story 33. In New York, you can always tell the county roads from the state roads because state-maintained roads are always in better shape than the county roads. But that is nothing compared to New Jersey rural roads. Potholes as big as your car and half a foot deep. Story 34. Florida, specifically South Florida. A week ago, there were 2 road ragers in front of me who stopped on the turnpike, screaming at each other. On Wednesday, a driver sped through a school zone and cut people off during the merge. Every single time at one stoplight, everybody ignores the red light in the turning lane and continues through. Story 35. Everyone talks about how the drivers in their state are the worst drivers ever and take it as a sort of pride that they drive where the worst drivers exist. I have lived in several different states in the United States and driven through many more, and let me tell you, drivers are bad everywhere. It is incredibly easy to get a driver's license in every state. People left lane camp everywhere. People drive under the speed limit everywhere. No one knows how to merge onto highways or how a zipper merge works. There is no magical state where people actually know what they are doing. There are probably 2 states that stand out though. 1. Ohio. The state patrol will pull you over for going 5 miles per hour over the highway speed limit where the limit is already extremely slow. It makes driving through that state unbearable. Florida. Half the drivers are over 70 years old, and the other half are tourists. Good luck. Story 36. Technically not a state, but the District of Columbia. There is an unfortunate combination of the worst drivers from 3 states known for bad driving, diplomats who do not respect traffic laws or common courtesy, and some of the most confusing and pointless street designs in the entire United States. It is rough here. Story 37. I have seen bad drivers everywhere, but I have never seen drivers do as many inexplicable, truly unexplainable things as in Maryland. Maryland drivers are in their own universe. You can try to tell them what you think, but they will not even notice that driving is happening. Story 38. I have not driven in many states, but I will say Massachusetts, solely because of Interstate 495. North of Boston, it is a hellscape of stop-and-go traffic, no matter what day or time I am there. Maine is also bad. It is usually full of tourists who have no idea where they are going, and most of the roads are severely underbuilt compared to the traffic they get in the summer. Story 39. Oklahoma is the worst state I have driven through and visited. It is hot, unattractive, and feels like a poor Bible Belt state. Story 40. Nebraska. Traveling between Omaha and Lincoln is manageable, but the approximately 6-hour drive between Lincoln and the Colorado border is difficult. Story 41. As a resident of California, it is unusual not to see the state mentioned. However, it makes sense because speeding is generally allowed. There are not many police officers on highways. They are mostly in cities and generally do not care about traffic violations. Tint? They do not care. Exhaust? They do not care, except for one incident with a Hyundai driver. Overall, California is a decent state to drive in. Story 42. Connecticut is the obstacle New Englanders must face to reach the rest of the country, and the obstacle the rest of the country must face to get to us. There is no redeeming value. Gas is 40 cents more expensive at every Connecticut highway station. So fill up in Massachusetts or New York on your way in. There is a brief stretch with some moderately impressive scenery of the red sandstone cliffs near what passes for a mountain range. The highways near New Haven and the casinos are filled with intoxicated individuals or reckless young drivers. Be sure not to miss your turn in Hartford. Pay close attention to the complex network of overpasses and underpasses, or you will find yourself off on an unintended detour. Story 43. Texas drivers either drive very slowly or as fast as drivers in California, but they are not as skilled. I actually love driving in California. Story 44. Texas. Worst roads, worst drivers, and toll roads on top. Badly designed highways with massive potholes. Being passed by reckless drivers in lifted trucks doing 100 miles an hour, then pay $8 or be delayed 3 hours. Story 45. Connecticut. Where are you all going, and why do you need to ride next to each other 5 to 10 miles per hour under the speed limit? Story 46. Indiana. I live in Michigan and have to drive through it to go mostly anywhere. It just goes on forever with nothing to look at and slow speed limits. Story 47. Massachusetts, probably, but with a caveat. Massachusetts is gorgeous, so driving here can actually be very entertaining and peaceful, and I really do not mind it too much. The drivers here are also very kind. It feels like we all collectively know how difficult the situation is, so we attempt to ease the burden on each other by waving someone to turn or letting someone into a lane. Drivers here can be difficult, but they do have empathy. That being said, the people here have no idea how to drive, but I do not necessarily blame that on them. The way the roads are structured is absolutely chaotic. 5 or 6-way intersections, roads that crisscross near intersections, only 4-lane highways in one of the densest city metros in America, and the main streets are mostly limited to 1 lane. It all generates a very stress-inducing experience, and it is understandable why Boston and Massachusetts drivers in general get the reputation of being aggressive. The roads seem designed to frustrate you. Story 48. Connecticut. I have noticed that Connecticut drivers will pull out right in front of you from a side road when there is nobody behind you. It is strange. I only see this phenomenon in Connecticut. Story 49. After driving south to Gulf Shores, I would say Highway 65 South is a nightmare. It is surrounded by nothing and has heavy traffic. It makes no sense. Story 50. New Jersey. We drive from North Carolina to Connecticut every summer for the last 10 years. Trying to find gas, food, or a clean restroom is nearly impossible. We now stop in Pennsylvania just to make sure that we do not have to struggle in New Jersey. Story 51. Oklahoma. I drive through the entire state regularly, and none of their roads have lines between lanes. There is also always construction, but seemingly no one is ever working on the sites. If you go off the highways at any point, you will not be able to find a road without crater-sized potholes. It is an absolute nightmare. Story 52. North Dakota. It is 900 miles of nothing but the horizon and you fending off your darkest thoughts. It is the king of the flat, boring states, which includes Nebraska and Kansas. The latter two just train you for the darkness that is found when you traverse North Dakota. Story 53. I have lived in Louisiana my entire life. Louisiana is the correct answer. Any other state I have visited has thoroughly impressed me with their roads and drivers. Except Oregon and Washington. I went there on my honeymoon. Those drivers are reckless. Story 54. South Carolina. I am from North Carolina, and every time I drive through South Carolina, it feels like drivers cannot help but tailgate me on the highway. It is stressful and annoying. Story 55. Alabama. I am severely frightened of the police there. I grew up there, and every time I go, something unfortunate happens. They ransack and damage my car or falsely accuse me of charges. Story 56. My home state of Wisconsin has poor left lane discipline, and most people here are overly cautious in 90% of situations. I have learned that the reason some people dislike driving in an area is the same reason others like it. It depends on whether you tend to have aggressive or defensive driving tendencies. Many people here dislike driving in Illinois, but I do not mind it because there seems to be more common sense there when it comes to driving. Story 57. For me, it's two states. South Carolina. I feel like Interstate 95 is just 2 lanes through most of the state. The tree growth is very thick along the highway, and there isn't much to see while driving. Pennsylvania. Many times when I have driven through the state, there were construction zones for miles. Story 58. Oklahoma's road conditions are very poor. The state needs to stop prioritizing oil executives and raise taxes to repair their roads. They also need to improve their schools. Story 59. Texas has very unusual patterns in their surface streets around highways. I can't get used to the number of places with strange turnarounds under highway overpasses that are different from left turns under overpasses, which are also distinct from how you actually get on the highway. Sacramento, California, has the most willfully dangerous drivers I have ever seen in my life. I grew up racing my beater against cab drivers in New York City. As much as I love California, they get my vote for the worst drivers anywhere because Sacramento is bad enough to represent the whole state. Story 60. Seriously, I actually found Kansas to be quite nice. The roads are well maintained, and the people are very courteous. My absolute first place is not a state. Palm Springs, at least 10 years ago, had the safest, most comfortable driving communities that I have ever seen. Story 61. Louisiana has some of the worst driving conditions in the United States. The roads are in poor shape, and drivers often act as if they are entitled to the road. There are no sidewalks or bike lanes, and there is no grid system, just many circles and one-way roads that can lead you miles in the opposite direction. Drivers often race to every red light, fail to stop for emergency vehicles, and generally do not prioritize others' safety. Story 62. Texas by a mile. Drivers from Texas believe they own the road with total disregard for others. Cannot stand it. Story 63. New Jersey. God forbid you take the wrong exit while on the turnpike, and now you are facing a 5 to 10 mile reroute plus you have to pay tolls again. Story 64. Florida. Interstate 95 from West Palm Beach south through Miami. Just 100 miles of a large number of careless drivers. Story 65. Florida. I have never seen traffic like that or personally witnessed so many accidents, and I am from New Jersey. Also, if you have to stop for a red light, you have time to eat lunch before the light changes. Then there will not be anywhere to go anyway because the traffic is all backed up. Story 66. Oregon is very slow on interstates and highways. In town, drivers can be unpredictable. The Portlandia episode, "No You Go," is very accurate. Arizona is also dangerous. Have you ever had a semi-truck pass you going over 80 miles per hour? It's not safe. Drivers from Arizona bring that behavior to California, which is problematic. Nevada has many reckless drivers who cannot drive safely. The road does not belong to you, Mr. Chrysler 200. Please remain calm. I have driven all over California my whole life, The pandemic made drivers worse, but I would still choose this state over any other. The roads are not that bad. There are worse states. Caltrans does their job. There are many routes to avoid traffic if you know the area. My only issue is stay out of the number 1 lane unless you are keeping with the flow. It is a passing lane. Please move over. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.